Some of the very best X-Men movie costumes look like they leaped right off the comic book page, while others seem to have come from a completely different universe. Across 2 decades of Marvel movies, the X-Men franchise has experimented wildly with how its iconic mutants are costumed. From grounded black leather in X-Men 2000 to more comic-inspired looks in later entries like X-Men, Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, the franchise has delivered a broad spectrum of interpretations. As comic book fans know, X-Men costumes aren't just about style. They're tied to identity, evolution, and iconic character moments. It's not just about looking good, it's about representing who these characters have always been. This list considers the very best X-Men movie costumes, and then ranks them by comic accuracy. Moreover, this list only considers movies about X-Men and related characters and therefore omits Charles Xavier and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Mystique in X-Men 2000. Rebecca Romijn's Mystique in the original X-Men made a big impact with audiences thanks to her striking, reptilian blue skin and yellow eyes. Her design was both seductive and unsettling, and helped re-establish Mystique as one of the X-Men's top-tier villains. However, from a comic standpoint, it couldn't be further from her original look. In the comics, Mystique is rarely, if ever, nude. She traditionally wears a white dress or bodysuit, often adorned with a gold belt and skull accessories. These outfits help emphasize her role as a confident, mysterious, and powerful shapeshifter with a unique sense of style. The movies discarded all of that in favor of body paint and prosthetics, which made for a visually memorable character but one that barely resembled her comic counterpart. Nightcrawler in X2, X-Men United. Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler in X2 is widely praised for being one of the film's best additions. His acrobatic fighting in the White House sequence is unforgettable, and the intricate scarification designs on his blue skin added a haunting backstory to the character. The teleportation effects, mannerisms, and accent all felt right, but visually, his design strayed significantly from his comic book look. In the comics, Nightcrawler's classic red and black suit featuring pointed shoulders, a V-neck chest, and 3-fingered gloves, his circus-inspired look is meant to contrast with his demonic appearance. The movie's version strips all that away, replacing his costume with a black coat and giving him a more reserved, tortured vibe. While Cummings' performance is stellar, the movie completely sidesteps the vibrant, Errol Flynn-esque visual identity that makes Nightcrawler so iconic in the comics. Storm in X-Men, Apocalypse. Alexandra Shipp's Storm in X-Men, Apocalypse offered a closer to a comic-accurate version of Ororo Munroe. Featuring a silver and black costume with an attached cape, tall boots, and a bold mohawk, this version of Storm was clearly inspired by her 1980s punk era in the comics. It felt regal yet fierce, blending ancient Egyptian influences with modern mutant fashion. Storm's mohawk in the comics symbolized a turning point, shedding her goddess image and embracing a tougher, more grounded identity. Apocalypse reflects that transformation visually, even if her role in the movie was somewhat underdeveloped. The costume's shape and dramatic flair were spot on, even if the palette was a bit muted. It wasn't a perfect match, but it was one of the franchise's most confident attempts to honor Storm's comic book roots. Magneto in X-Men, Days of Future Past. Michael Fassbender's Magneto sports one of the most comic-inspired costumes in X-Men. Days of Future Past, combining his traditional elements, cape, body armor, and the iconic helmet, with a more grounded aesthetic. The costume evokes authority and menace, clearly positioning Magneto as a powerful, battle-hardened figure. It's functional without being dull, and still allows his royal, commanding energy to shine through. However, the color scheme is one of the key departures from the comics. Where comic Magneto often wears rich purples and reds with metallic accents, this movie version leans into darker tones, opting for black, maroon, and muted browns. The look fits the film's dystopian tone but loses some of the bold vibrancy associated with the character's classic appearance. Cyclops in X-Men, Apocalypse. Cyclops finally got a costume worthy of his comic book legacy at the end of X-Men, Apocalypse. After years of black leather suits that downplayed his iconic style, this version truly delivered. The blue bodysuit with yellow straps and accents, paired with a silver visor, echoed Scott Summers' 1990s costume from X-Men. The anime, it captures the spirit of Cyclops as a field leader and classic superhero. His earlier looks in the series felt generic and indistinct, but this version finally celebrated his iconic visual identity. Unfortunately, this costume never sees action, but it was a thrilling addition regardless. Weapon X in X-Men, Apocalypse. Hugh Jackman's brief cameo as Weapon X in X-Men, Apocalypse was one of the film's most talked about moments. While the scene felt a bit shoehorned in, it delivered a thrilling visual Easter egg: Wolverine in his classic Weapon X gear. The look included metal headgear, tubes, and minimal clothing, straight from Barry Windsor Smith's iconic illustrations and Marvel Comics presence. The only major deviation was that Wolverine's face was visible, where the comics usually cover it with a visor or helmet. Still, this was as close as the films ever came to replicating that specific era of Logan's life. It was a haunting and visually faithful rendition of his origin as a government experiment that paid almost complete homage to the source material's grim and gritty detail. Psylocke in X-Men Apocalypse. Olivia Munn's Psylocke in X-Men Apocalypse was one of the most visually faithful costume adaptations in the entire franchise. Her suit, featuring a purple one-piece with matching sash, thigh-high boots, and gloves, was nearly identical to the Jim Lee-era look that defined Betsy Braddock for much of the 90s. It was sleek, bold, and unmistakably Psylocke, with the addition of a psychic blade to complete the aesthetic. The film itself didn't give the character much to do, but the visual design was a near-perfect recreation of the comics. It felt like the filmmakers made a deliberate effort to translate her costume panel for panel. In a movie full of reimagined looks, Psylocke stood out by sticking to the original. While the outfit might be impractical, its comic fidelity made it a standout in the live-action X-Men world. Wolverine in Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine finally delivers what audiences have wanted for over 20 years. Hugh Jackman in the classic yellow and blue Wolverine costume. The design is unmistakably faithful to Logan's most iconic look, including his iconic cowl. With bright canary yellow, bold blue accents, and the black X details, the costume mirrors his comic appearance almost exactly. The only real deviations are transforming decorative elements into practical pieces, such as the shoulders and the lack of blue trunks. Regardless, after years of avoiding the classic costume, it's a huge moment for both the character and the franchise. It honors the legacy of the comics while finally embracing the kind of bold costuming that makes superhero movies feel larger than life. Deadpool in Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool suit in the 2016 film is arguably the most comic-accurate costume in the entire X-Men movie franchise. From the deep red tones to the black patches around the eyes and the utility belt with his insignia, the suit is practically a one-to-one translation from the page to the screen. Even Deadpool's expressive eyes, achieved with CGI, mimic the way his mask is drawn in the comics to reflect his emotions. Unlike many other X-Men movie costumes, Deadpool's outfit doesn't feel toned down. It embraces the absurdity of its source while still looking tactical and functional. The accuracy and attention immediately won over audiences to detail. It's a costume that proves comic authenticity and cinematic credibility don't have to be mutually exclusive, and it set a new standard for the X-Men franchise's approach to superhero style.